Let's move along to the Denver Broncos, second part of our double trouble for today. Another team with a new quarterback this offseason. Case Keenum was lights out last year for the Minnesota Vikings, although they felt like they had an upgrade available in Kirk Cousins, who they signed as a free agent. Keenum goes back to Denver, where there's some familiar principles involved. Keenum, of course, at one point played for Gary Kubiak, who's an offensive and I think he's a scouting consultant or offensive consultant and scouting consultant for the Broncos, formerly their head coach. And, of course, a lot of the system is still in place there. So familiar territory for Keenum. But after last year's remarkable season, Matthew, you buying in on him as a viable starter this year?
I'm not. It's a new system, and we want to see exactly. But it wouldn't shock me. Like, there are a couple quarterbacks that were just like, you never know, obviously. It's fantasy football. But
Case Keenum last year.
Case Keenum last year is a perfect example. So I think Keenum is a talented player. I think what Keenum showed last year is that in the right system, if he doesn't have, Jeff Fisher coaching him, Keenum can be a productive NFL quarterback.
Yep.
And so he goes to a team that has two very good wide receivers in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. We will see what they get out of Jake Butt. We will see what they get out of Cortland Sutton, but you're hearing positive things out of camp out of both of them. We expect them to have a good run game and a good defense. So, yeah, it would not surprise me if Case Keenum became fantasy relevant, but at the moment I don't have him ranked as such. I think it's going to be more of a run-first conservative offense that tries to, play good defense and run the ball well, offsetted by, the two receivers.
Along those lines, and play good defense and run the ball effectively, Royce Freeman and Devontae Booker appear to be in a competition right now, I guess. Devontae Booker is the incumbent player, the incumbent starter. Royce Freeman's a third-round pick out of Oregon who had 60 rushing touchdowns during his college career, one of the most decorated runners at a school that has a long list of NFL players on its resume. So either one of you, I'll start with you, Stephania, do you envision a scenario where Royce Freeman doesn't eventually win this starting job?
I think the more I hear, the more I expect that he will.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about his upside when we were talking about rookies who could have big years. And I think he has the potential to do so. Earlier, when we were having our fantasy summit, I still was reminding people Booker was still, like you said, the incumbent. And Booker, they had plans for last year. He had the wrist injury, had the surgery that delayed his entry into, and then it never seemed like he really got up to speed or was in sync with what they were doing there.
Right.
So I don't know that we've seen the best of him. I don't know that the best of him is enough to keep Royce Freeman from taking over that job.
Take it from
3.6 yards per carry for his career for Devontae Booker. I don't think he's any good. I think he's just a guy.
He's an average.
I think he's just a very average. You agree?
I was going to say, the metric wins above replacement that's very popular in baseball, and they're trying to, I think, establish something along those lines in football, which might be difficult to do. But when they think like wins above replacement, to me, it's like wins above Devontae Booker, right? I think he's an average level running back. I don't think he is. I think he belongs in the league, but he should not be a starter. And that's not something personal or anything. I just think that you draft a guy in Royce Freeman in the third round for a very specific reason. I don't know how much of a factor he'll be in the passing game.
Right.
I think he is going to be
Which is where Booker, I think, has an edge, is in the passing game. So do you see Booker as like in passing situations, but Royce Freeman
could be kind of Latavius Murray-like in the sense that like he's got a very specific role and set of skills that you're going to rely upon. But if the Broncos...
Did you just say he has a very specific set of skills? Is Royce Freeman going to come save my daughter and gets kidnapped overseas?
Freeman? Yeah. Royce Freeman, though, is inside both of our top 30. He's being drafted at running back 26. We all agree that Royce Freeman is the back that you should draft amongst the Broncos. There's two wide receivers that really obviously pique our interest in Denver.
Yep. The only thing I was just going to add to the Freeman conversation, by the way, very quickly, was just that the Broncos last year, who couldn't run the ball effectively at all and had an offense that was just, kind of stuck in the mud, still 8th most rushing attempts in the NFL. I mean, it's a team that wants to run the ball.
Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders at one point were the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. I'm not sure that's the case anymore. They're really good ones elsewhere around the NFL, including in Minnesota, amongst other places. But Demaryius Thomas is right across the board. 15th for you, 15th for me, 15th in the consensus ranks, and being drafted 16th overall, Matthew. I don't know that there's really much to say about Demaryius Thomas because we all feel pretty strongly about him. But is there a case to be made that Emmanuel Sanders is being perhaps overlooked in this equation?
2014 to 2016, he was one of only 6 wide receivers in the NFL with 1,000 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns in all 3 seasons. Since coming to the Broncos, he's averaging over 8 targets a game. He's top 20 among wide receivers in terms of total targets. Stephania, and last year, didn't feel like he was ever fully healthy last year, at least to me. Felt like maybe there was something being hidden a little bit with Sanders.
Well, he wasn't. He was trying to play when he was injured, and he wasn't 100%. And you saw, you could see it, right?
So now getting a real quarterback. I mean, their quarterback play last year was brutal, Field.
It was
awful.
They signed Brock Osweiler.
Right. I mean, they thought Brock Osweiler could help the position.
That's my point. Yes.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Yeah. So they were stinky. They were not so good. They were
Stinky
poor.
is a word. That's not like one of the words you tell your daughters. Like, it's okay to say the word stinky as opposed to the alternatives.
I know. Matthew was given a list.
I have twin daughters that are 6. I tell them to say what I tell them to say, not what they hear me say.